Hello there. This is a briefish, I hope, video about the game Leipzig, Napoleon Encircled, released by Decision Games 10 years ago. It's 2020 now. It's by Chris Perello, and it's part of, though it's part of it's part of their folio game series, so it comes in a folio style. You have here sort of errata from the Decision Games website. And it's also part of the Musket and Sabre series. Now, the Decision Games folio games I find very admirable because they're cheap and they're meant to be sort of quick to learn, quick to play, and yet still historically accurate. This is, I think, only my second one of their folio games. The first one I had was on the Custer's Last Stand. I can't remember the exact name of it. It was a solitaire game and I wasn't very impressed with it. It just felt sort of quite shallow. But I understand other people like there's several games in that series, so I stayed off that. But some people really like this, so fair enough to them. Now this game, I'm very interested in Musket and Sabre series because it's like grand tactical scale. I'm interested in around the tactical, maybe operational Napoleonics and American Civil War, and the Musket Sabre system is supposed to cover all 19th century warfare, and it's essentially a kind of upgrade from the old blue and grey and Napoleon at War system. Neither of those systems have I played any games of. They're sort of from the heydays of SPI back in the 80s, I suppose, and born out of the classic Napoleon at Waterloo, which I have played. Now that is your classic standard introductory war game with zones of control, odds-based combat, and etc., like that. Not much difference between cavalry and artillery and so forth. A very simple game to play, very enjoyable and quick to get into, but maybe not following historical tactics so well. So the attempt, the game comes with very short designer's notes. So this is the actual game rules, which is essentially it's just how to set up, the setup, and then some special rules to do with things like Bernadotte's army, how it comes in, off-map boxes, headquarters, then a few design notes, and then an order of battle here. Then you've got the terrain effects chart and the combat results chart. The actual series rules are 8 pages long, so it doesn't take long, and again just a tiny bit of designer's notes here. Now Decision Games, commendably, they've put on their website much longer, sort of 10 or 12 page set of designer's notes addressing how the game was conceived in answering to sort of what complaints the designer and others I presume had of the kind of, essentially said, the rugby scrum nature of the old blue and grey etc. series, whereby you would sort of set up units with alternate hexes to make the best use of zones of control and the combat results chart, which was kind of push-pull, not sort of very bloody. So there's a lot of changes in this. I can't speak too much. I'm going to sort of talk personally about the game first, and then I'll address the system a little bit. This is only meant to be an introduction, then I'm going to play the game, and I'll talk about it a bit more in a couple of other videos as well, once I've had some experience with it. So before I go any further, I'd like to say thank you very much to Colditz, Mr. Man. That's really kind of you. He gave this game to me. I won a game from him in the European War Games chain, the Generosity, and I inquired about this game because, like I said, I've been interested in these for some time, and he just threw it in gratis. So this video is for him, and this video series of this game. I haven't been doing many videos lately because I've been having trouble uploading. All the videos which I upload get stuck in processing sort of interminably. I videoed one of this last night and it's uploaded but not processing. I don't know. So I'm having a problem with the YouTube app. Slows everything down. But anyway, so I bumped this up to the beginning of my queue for Mr. Colditz's sake. And yeah, I'm thrilled. and also surprised, because my understanding of these are sort of small, quick games. And I got this, and it's quite a large map, and there's a lot of counters going on, and the rules have a lot of extra sort of points and subtleties in them, which make it a lot more interesting than your basic sort of blue and grey type game. And I started reading it on Board Game Geek, and there's not that much for this particular game, but about the series and on Console World, there's complaints that it's not an easy set of rules and not quick playing, which I think that's not so much problem with rules, but a problem with the advertising for the Folio game series. So my understanding is, like the other Folio game I got, they are very quick and easy to learn and to play. But this particular Musket Sabre, and perhaps also Leipzig, particularly because it's a very big battle, is a bit more involved. So I set this up the other day. I got a bit of a cold, so my whole family were down with the cold this weekend. So I thought, okay, I'll get this out and give it a play and see how it goes. And it took me an hour just to set everything up. It's not because it's the setup sort of unfriendly or uncomplicated. It's very helpful, really, because every counter has a formation, and then where did he go? Yeah, I think he was there. Formation number, and so it says this formation, all the counters in this formation set up within, so many hexes of this hex. So it's sort of quite quick in itself, but for this particular game there is a lot. So for example, there's a lot going on. The French have 16 formations. Then you have, I'll talk a little bit about the battle, because I'm enthralled about this, because I learned most of my history about warfare from playing games rather than reading books. I do read books, but not necessarily on warfare, and I find history of warfare tends to be more enjoyable for me to learn through games. So I was interested in this battle. We have the French here, Napoleon's here, you've got Murat there, you've got Ney there, and I say in advance I will mispronounce things, and I'm sorry, but I expect you will understand what name I'm trying to say. Most of it's ignorant from... I haven't been a grognard for as long as many people, so I haven't heard names and places spoken of, so I don't know pronunciations. I just make them up from what I see written down. But anyway, so Murat's there, he's with the cavalry. Then you have like the old guard, the young guard around here. You have Napoleon's headquarters in Leipzig, and then they have a line of communication off here, a line of communication off here, and you can see their forces are kind of spread out. They are, in effect, surrounded. Though coming from the north, they have reinforcements coming in here and here later on. The game will play for, you're given 4 days and 8 turns per day, an hour and a half each. So from sort of from dawn to twilight to dusk, twilight to twilight, and a night turn. So that's 9 turns a day, and I think it says it's 32 turns total. Just to keep speaking to the quick, I'll zoom in a minute. So you have Russians coming on here, you have Prussians coming on here. You have Austrians coming on here and here, some Russians coming on here. You already have Russians and Prussians here, and you have combined Russian and Austrian force coming on there, and some Austrians already there. So from the designer's notes, I read that the Allied armies that are encircling Napoleon and bearing down on him mixed their commands, their nationalities, so they would have, say, Russians and Austrians in the same army. So the idea being that then you wouldn't, say, have all the Russians waiting for all the Austrians to get in and then sort of just walk in at the end and help with the mopping up and claiming laurels without doing much. They mix their armies together so that no one would sort of be no one nation would be hanging back too much. So it's a very interesting situation. Now, famously, apparently, this bridge here, the Lindenau Bridge, was destroyed, and that meant that a French line of communication was cut off. I can see that the French line of communication here is going to be cut off quite, would be threatened quite a lot, because there's heavy forces coming on here. So if that happens, that means that they would only have Leipzig itself as a line of communication. Now, lines of communication are very important, and headquarters, they function the same in that if a unit does not have like an escape route, as it were, so a route of clear hexes, free of enemy, to a line of communication or the active headquarters, then they cannot gain replacements, and they will have to take a morale check before sort of standing for any combat. So if all your line of communications are gone and your headquarters is inactive for any reason, it will be inactive either because it's being moved or it's been under attack, and maybe one or two other sort of edge cases, then your army is in big trouble. So the Allies will be looking to cut that, and then homing in on Leipzig, and sort of the French essentially, I think, will be trying to keep this line open because they don't have much to defend here, although they can shift quite quickly. And the designer's notes also note that essentially it's up to the French to create as much damage as they can in the early turns before all the reinforcements of the Allied armies come on. So it's not just a matter of the French turtling and sort of finding strong defensive positions. They have to attack. Their forces are generally stronger than the Allies, sort of unit to unit, but eventually the Allies will be swamping them in terms of numbers, so they need to sort of create a balance early on. So an exciting situation, especially since because you've got river here, you've got network of rivers here, network of rivers here, which essentially means and this river can only be crossed here, and then there are several fords along it, but essentially there's swamps along it, very restrictive. So essentially you kind of have like an area of battle here. We have Ney in command here. You have a large area of battle here on this plain, and then you've got another one here and another one here. So there's kind of 4 quarters to the battle area. Interestingly, there's some 2 off-map movement boxes. So for example, the Austrian reinforcements here, they can take a movement point, or no, it's a turn to enter one of those boxes, and another turn to go to another one. So you can see the Austrians could shift from here to here, and that will keep the French guessing somewhat. So that's the situation. Very interesting, and like I said, pleasant surprise that there's a lot more to it than I was expecting. So to the rules. Now the rules, like I said, 8 pages, and I showed you a brief look at what I called errata, but to be fair, my understanding, having read through the rules and sort of read through all the errata, is that this system is good to go as it is written. You don't need the errata. They are more clarifications and refinements to the system. So they don't actually correct anything that was wrong. They just either clarify the system as printed or have sort of made some changes and refinements to it. So I chose to have written in all the changes except for some sort of heavy clarifications for like cavalry charges and so forth. And I think I understood the rules anyway. The clarifications that I found there, I had, from my one read through, I had already understood them. It's more a case of things like having to remember a rule you read elsewhere, which is an exception to a rule that speaks about here, and that's sort of kind of highlighted in the clarifications. But so I chosen to sort of refine the rules as according to that release of let's just call it errata for convenience's sake. What do they call it? Errata and clarifications. And they've been incorporated into standard rules, so you can just download the whole thing. But I actually like these little booklets. I like the feel of the paper and the print, the size of the print and so forth. I'd much prefer that than a bigger sort of PDF printed out document. So the special rules, because formations come on, I've colour coded to help see who comes on where. So, west, south or east, just to help with setup, and also so at a quick glance I can see, because it's very important to understand who's coming on where and when. You need to keep track of that, and it's, so something like this just helps to see that at a glance. I have to assume that the French player has some sense of when and where the Allied forces are, and so when and where they're going to be coming on. And so is able to respond to them. I've blocked out a lot. So you get, this is a terrain effects chart is just standard for the series. So quite a few entries were not appropriate for this game. So I just blocked those out. I always add more to the table. So, for example, I've got how disrupted unit, the stacking, what disruption is. Then you have march moves, variable moves, disengagement, lines of retreat, and so forth. Now that brings me to the system. So as I understand it, two of the key things that Chris Perello changed in this system is the combat is differential, so it's not odds based. So that is to stop the thing where you're sort of you're looking for that one extra unit just to bring you up from 3-1 to 4-1 odds, and sort of other units not being in the battle, and so making lots of game decisions purely based upon how the combat results table, the odds-based system works. So with the differential, more or less every, because it's each column is 2 to 3, 4 to 5, so you have sort of a spread of 2 in each column. So more or less every point is going to count in your combat. And I think differentials can be awkward when you have sort of a big variable of a big spread of the numbers, but there's not such a large spread. Stacking is 3 units per hex, so the most you can get this game is 18 points against, say, a 0 or a 1, which is automatically on the 10-1 plus 10 or more column. Then the other, in relation to the combat results table, is also there's the classic sort of musket, blue and grey, etc. Apparently it was more like, say, the Kevin Zucker system, where there's more retreats rather than damage. So at extremes you get complete elimination, but generally there's just one or the other side retreated. Now this, most of these units are two-sided, so they have a second step. So already that attritional nature has been worked into the combat. And then also there's lots of exchange and not so many not so many retreat results, except an option. So for example, you could either take a step loss or retreat in certain cases. So that's a big change. Then another thing which is just sort of theory to me, we'll see how it actually works out, is he's changed the retreats, whereas before he said often what will happen is you'll find a unit would break through a line, and then so say if we had an attacking unit here, and say it broke through the line here, so say these ones retreated, maybe 2, and there's an attacker here. He now exerts a zone of control here and here. And then say if there were other attackers around here and here, then when you got retreat results on these two, they wouldn't be able to retreat into zones of control, and they would be eliminated. And that is more or less how you worked out your combats. You'd try to surround and eliminate units in trying to retreat. Well, he didn't want that kind of. He said it was sort of fair enough in that, you know, it made the game sort of quite abstract, but it gave you tactical decisions to think out. But instead, he's finessed lines of retreat, so you can retreat through zones of control, but there's a chance of something bad happening. And so there's some subtleties to do with you have a valid escape route, and which could be either safe or not. So you could have an unsafe but valid escape route and a safe and valid escape route. And I'll detail how that works out in another system and what difference it makes to the combat. So I think I've waffled on for 20 minutes, which is probably quite long enough. I'll just show you what's going on. Yes, it's very interesting. And so the system, just mentioned about the headquarters and the leaders. So leaders and headquarters make some changes. So leaders can assist units and so forth. There's a lot more to say about the combat because of other subtleties and refinements that I haven't spoken about. But the last thing I'd like to say is about the headquarters. So at the moment, the Allies only have one headquarters active. What this means is that the units in this area are under that headquarters. They're fine, they're good to go. But all the others that are coming on now or when they come on with their headquarters, the headquarters, as it moves, will have to be on its... that's only got that active. I think that's a mistake. It says active both sides. There should be an inactive side, which means the units will have to... There you go, that one's got its inactive side. When that's inactive, the headquarters has to be when it's moving on. All its... the units within its command. So for the French, that would be all of them, because they only have one headquarters, will have to roll for movement. So there'll be like a variable, not whether they move or not, but just how far they move. So again, that gives an advantage to the French, and it makes it a very interesting game to see how, sort of quite tense situation, to see how quickly the Allies can get organised and into their positions for the main assault. So I will leave that there for now and see how this gets uploaded. Ta-ra for now.